It was a late summer afternoon in 1972, and the town of Willow Creek was buzzing with the lazy warmth of the season. Children ran along the sidewalks, and the scent of freshly cut grass lingered in the air. Emily and Sarah Thompson, 16 and 14, had been inseparable since birth. That day, like many others, they decided to explore near the old river bridge just beyond the edge of town, a place the locals warned children about, claiming it was haunted or cursed. But the sisters didn't care. With a sense of adventure sparkling in their eyes, they promised to be back before sunset. Their parents waited anxiously, glancing at the clock every few minutes. Hours passed, and the sisters never returned. Panic began to ripple through the household as calls to neighbors and frantic searching along the bridge yielded nothing. The girls' bicycles were found abandoned at the edge of the woods, tires half buried in tall grass, as if they had simply vanished into thin air. The townspeople, familiar with the forest paths and the river's edge, were baffled. There was no sign of struggle, no footprints leading away, nothing that could explain their sudden disappearance. By evening, the entire town seemed to hold its breath. Search parties were organized, flashlights cutting through the shadows, dogs sniffing the underbrush, neighbors calling the sisters' names. The bridge, which had always seemed ordinary, now loomed ominously over the river, its reflection shimmering eerily in the fading light. People whispered nervously about strange sounds, faint laughter, rustling in the reeds, the echo of footsteps that seemed too soft to belong to anyone human. But even after hours of searching, Emily and Sarah remained nowhere to be found. The following days brought only dead ends and mounting fear. Police questioned everyone who might have seen something unusual, but no credible leads emerged. Rumors spread like wildfire. Some claimed the girls had run away, though both were known for their deep attachment to family and friends. Others whispered darker possibilities, abduction, or even a supernatural explanation tied to the old bridge that had always carried an air of mystery. The more the adults tried to reason, the more the town seemed gripped by a chilling uncertainty, as though the forest itself had swallowed the sisters whole. As the weeks turned into months, the hopelessness only deepened. The townspeople's attempts to restore normalcy failed. Every shadow near the river, every whisper in the wind, reminded them of the missing sisters. The Thompson household remained frozen in time, meals left untouched, bedrooms still neatly made, school books open on desks. It was as if Emily and Sarah had been plucked from reality itself, leaving behind only the echoes of their presence. Willow Creek was no longer the quiet, safe town it had once been. It had become a place haunted by the mystery of two girls who vanished without a trace. The old river bridge had always been a silent landmark on the outskirts of Willow Creek, worn and weathered by decades of wind, rain, and rust. Most townsfolk crossed it without a second thought, treating it as nothing more than a shortcut to the other side of town. But after Emily and Sarah vanished, the bridge took on a far darker reputation. People began to notice strange things, reflections in the water that didn't match reality, fleeting shadows that seemed to linger longer than they should, and an unsettling chill that made even the warmest days feel cold near its railing. Children dared each other to venture across the bridge at night, whispering that the ghostly figures of Emily and Sarah sometimes appeared, staring silently at anyone brave, or foolish, enough to come close. Even adults felt the tension when they passed over it, often gripping the railing tightly and avoiding eye contact with the river below. One local fisherman swore he saw two girls' faces in the reflection at sunset, their expressions frozen in fear, before the image melted away like mist. Stories like this spread quickly, some dismissing them as imagination, while others began to feel the bridge itself was alive, holding secrets it refused to reveal. As months turned into years, the bridge became a magnet for the curious and the daring. Teens from neighboring towns would drive out after dark, trying to capture the haunting reflection on film or in photographs, though no evidence ever seemed to survive the night. Locals whispered that the water acted like a mirror, reflecting not the present, but some twisted memory of the past. Those who spent even a few minutes staring at it reported feeling dizzy, disoriented, or overwhelmed with a sudden sense of dread, as if the river were staring back at them, judging them. The bridge's architecture itself added to the unease. Its rusted steel beams cast jagged shadows across the water, creating shapes that sometimes resembled human figures. On foggy mornings, the outlines of the bridge would appear to float above the river, giving the impression that the structure itself was suspended in mid-air. Many claimed that during these moments, the reflections of Emily and Sarah were most vivid, appearing as if trapped in the water, screaming silently for someone to notice. Parents began warning their children to stay away, but curiosity and fear pulled people in anyway, as if the bridge were daring them to uncover its secrets. By the time decades had passed, the bridge had earned a dark reputation that no one could ignore. It wasn't just a location, it had become a symbol of the town's guilt, fear, and obsession with the sisters' disappearance. Every reflection in the river was a reminder that something had gone horribly wrong, that Emily and Sarah had vanished under circumstances that defied logic. And though the town tried to forget, the bridge never let them. It held its secrets tightly, teasing those who approached, whispering in the wind, daring someone to finally uncover the terrifying truth hidden beneath its surface. As the years rolled on, the disappearance of Emily and Sarah Thompson settled into the dusty files of the Willow Creek Police Department. Investigators came and went, each convinced they would crack the case, yet each returned empty-handed. Every lead seemed promising at first: an unclaimed car in a neighboring town, a cryptic note left on a school desk, or a faint set of footprints near the riverbank. But they all ended in frustration. No one could explain how two teenage girls could simply vanish without a trace, leaving behind bikes, belongings, and the echo of laughter that once filled the air around the old bridge. The townspeople tried to maintain a sense of normalcy, but the absence of the sisters hung over Willow Creek like a shadow. Parents forbade their children from wandering near the river or the bridge, and local legends began to grow with every retelling. Some claimed the girls had been taken by strangers, others whispered about something far darker lurking in the woods, a force that no one dared confront. Even decades later, locals recalled hearing faint calls for help in the dead of night, or seeing flashes of two figures moving in the trees, only to vanish when approached. Law enforcement struggled to keep the case alive. Files were shuffled, leads re-examined, and old witness statements revisited, but the trail remained cold. People who had once been close to the girls were interviewed repeatedly, sometimes so often they began to question their own memories. Occasionally, a stranger would arrive in town, claiming they knew something, but these visits ended as mysteriously as they began, leaving behind only more questions. The police could only mark time, watch as the years went by, and hope that a miracle would reveal the girls' fate. Meanwhile, the community itself began to fracture under the weight of uncertainty. Families whispered about curses and haunted places, about the strange behavior of the river and its bridge. Some residents moved away, unable to live under the shadow of a mystery that refused to fade, while others stayed, obsessively searching for answers, scouring the woods, and questioning every new noise in the night. The town's collective memory of Emily and Sarah became a delicate mix of hope and fear, a story everyone knew but no one fully understood. Even after decades, the Thompson sisters remained a ghostly presence in Willow Creek. The police files gathered dust, local legends grew darker, and the bridge continued to watch silently over the river. Attempts to bring closure, through searches, interviews, and even psychic investigations, failed. Every new lead seemed to disappear into the same void that had swallowed Emily and Sarah, as if the town itself had been marked by the girls' absence. It was a mystery without resolution, a wound that never healed, and a cold case that refused to die, lingering in the minds of every resident who had once known laughter by the river. Exactly 50 years after Emily and Sarah vanished, a stranger appeared in Willow Creek, stirring whispers from every corner of the town. No one knew his name or where he had come from, but his presence immediately drew attention. He was tall, thin, and carried an air of quiet menace, like someone who had seen far too much and spoken far too little. Locals noticed his eyes, dark, calculating, and strangely familiar, though they couldn't place why. He walked the streets slowly, pausing near the old river bridge as if he could sense the secrets hidden beneath its worn steel beams. The stranger visited the Thompson household first, knocking politely on the door as though he belonged there. When he spoke, his voice was calm, almost hypnotic, and he carried a faded photograph that caused the family to freeze in disbelief. It was an old image of the sisters, smiling as they had decades ago, standing by the bridge. But there was something impossible about it. The reflection in the water behind them didn't match reality. It was distorted, showing shapes and forms that made the hairs on the back of every neck stand up. The parents, long resigned to grief, felt a shiver of fear mixed with hope. They weren't sure whether to believe the stranger or fear what he might reveal. Word spread through town like wildfire. People gathered near the bridge that evening, curious to see what the stranger might do. He didn't speak much, only pointing toward the river and asking onlookers to watch closely. As the sun sank behind the trees, the water's surface began to shimmer unnaturally, as if responding to some unseen command. Residents whispered that the reflection was almost alive, moving in ways the real world never could. Some swore they saw the faint silhouettes of Emily and Sarah, just beyond reach, trapped in a reflection that no human eyes had ever seen before. The stranger hinted at knowledge no one could comprehend. He spoke of hidden chambers, long-forgotten rituals, and symbols that had been etched into the very foundations of the town. His words were cryptic, leaving listeners simultaneously terrified and captivated. People who had dismissed old legends of the bridge as childish tales began to realize there might be truth in the stories. Fear rippled through the crowd, but so did a desperate curiosity. Could this stranger finally hold the key to what happened all those years ago? As night fell, the atmosphere near the bridge grew heavier, almost suffocating. Shadows stretched unnaturally along the water, and the wind seemed to carry whispers, faint and unplaceable. The stranger stood motionless, his gaze locked on the river, as if he could see through time itself. Everyone present felt a chill, a sense that the past was colliding with the present. Whatever secret he had brought with him, it was alive and waiting to reveal the next horrifying chapter. The town, long resigned to a lifetime of unanswered questions, suddenly realized that the story of Emily and Sarah Thompson was far from over, and that the stranger's arrival had changed everything. It was a late afternoon when the town's bravest, or perhaps most foolhardy, gathered at the old bridge, drawn by rumors of the stranger and the shimmering water he had spoken of. The river flowed quietly beneath the rusted beams, its surface unnaturally still, as if it were holding its breath. People edged closer, hesitant to look too long, sensing that this was no ordinary reflection. As the sun began to dip toward the horizon, a pale, silver glow spread across the water, drawing every eye toward its surface. And then, impossibly, the faces of Emily and Sarah appeared. At first, the crowd thought it was a trick of the light, shadows blending with the ripples, creating a fleeting illusion. But as seconds stretched into minutes, it became clear. These were unmistakably the sisters, frozen in the reflection, staring directly at anyone who dared to look. Their expressions were not smiling, not playful. They were terrified, eyes wide with a horror that no child should ever feel. Gasps and murmurs filled the air as people pointed, unable to turn away from the impossible sight. Even those who had doubted the stranger's story were forced to confront a reality far stranger than anything they could have imagined. Some witnesses described the reflection as distorted, twisted in ways that defied logic. The sisters' faces would shift subtly, almost as if they were trying to communicate through the water, but their voices were trapped beneath the surface, silent and unreachable. Ripples formed patterns, like hands pressing against an invisible barrier, desperately seeking escape. A few who had stood closest to the edge claimed they felt a pull, a cold tug at their very souls, as if the reflection wanted them to step in, to join the trapped sisters. Fear spread like wildfire, yet no one could look away. The stranger stood nearby, quietly observing, his face unreadable. He didn't intervene, but his presence seemed to command the scene, as though he had known this moment would come all along. Some townspeople whispered that he had orchestrated it, though for what purpose, no one could guess. Others felt that the water itself had awakened after decades of silence, finally revealing the truth in a way that could not be ignored. Every movement in the reflection was deliberate, every flicker of light and shadow carrying a message the living could only half understand, leaving the entire crowd in stunned silence. As the sun dipped fully below the horizon, the reflection remained, glowing faintly under the moonlight. Emily and Sarah's images lingered, haunting and unreal, leaving a sense of dread that settled deep into the bones of everyone present. People began to whisper of curses, of secrets buried too long, and of a horror the town had been trying to forget for 50 years. The bridge was no longer just a place where the sisters had disappeared, it was a portal to a truth too terrifying to confront directly. And in that reflection, the town realized something chilling. The sisters were still trapped, still calling out in silence, and the nightmare of that day in 1972 was far from over. After the shocking reflection incident, a sense of urgency gripped Willow Creek. The stranger led a small group of locals to investigate the area beneath the old river bridge, a place long thought to be nothing more than a hollow support structure. Crawling into the narrow, dark space, they were immediately struck by the musty smell of damp earth and decay. Dust and cobwebs coated the beams, and every step echoed ominously, as if the river itself was warning them to turn back. It was the kind of darkness that seemed to swallow sound, leaving only the faint drip of water and the pounding of hearts. As they moved deeper, strange markings became visible on the walls, scratches and symbols that no one could immediately recognize. They weren't random. There was intent behind each line and curve, as if someone, or something, had etched messages that were meant to remain hidden from ordinary eyes. Among the dust and debris, remnants of the sisters' belongings were discovered, a worn-out scarf, a half-torn notebook, and a small locket that had belonged to Emily. The sisters had been here, trapped in this hidden chamber all along. The air grew colder the further they went, and a creeping sense of dread settled over the group. It was as if the space beneath the bridge had absorbed decades of fear and sorrow, holding it like a living entity. Some members of the group reported hearing faint whispers or soft footsteps, though there was no one else present. The stranger remained calm, almost eerily composed, and instructed them to examine the far corner of the chamber. There, partially obscured by rubble, they found a crude carving in the stone floor, a circle with symbols radiating outward, reminiscent of ancient, arcane markings. Curiosity mixed with terror as the team attempted to decipher the symbols. Scholars in the town were later consulted, and while no one could fully interpret them, everyone agreed on one chilling conclusion. The markings were meant to bind or trap. It became clear that the sisters' disappearance was not an accident. Someone, or something had deliberately imprisoned them here, hiding their existence from the world. The thought sent shivers down their spines. For decades, the bridge had concealed a secret so dark and meticulous that no one could have imagined it, a secret that the town had unknowingly overlooked for half a century. Even with these discoveries, the chamber held more questions than answers. How had the sisters survived in this hidden, claustrophobic space? What or who had marked the walls with these symbols, and for what ultimate purpose? And why had the bridge, a simple structure in the river, become the vessel for such a sinister scheme? As the group carefully backed out of the chamber, the weight of the revelations pressed heavily on everyone's mind. It was clear that beneath the bridge lay not only the physical remains of the past but also the haunting echoes of a terror that had been meticulously concealed for decades, a terror still pulsing beneath the quiet waters of Willow Creek. As investigators and locals pieced together the chilling discoveries beneath the bridge, a horrifying picture began to emerge, one that no one in Willow Creek could have imagined. It became clear that Emily and Sarah's disappearance was not random, not a simple accident, and certainly not something that time could heal. Someone in the town's past had orchestrated every detail, ensuring the sisters would vanish without a trace, leaving behind only whispers, shadows, and half-remembered fears. The bridge, the reflections, the hidden chamber, they were all part of a carefully constructed trap, designed to hold the girls and keep the town in the dark. The stranger, who had first appeared so mysteriously, began revealing pieces of the puzzle. According to him, the perpetrator was someone deeply respected in Willow Creek, a figure whose public image had shielded them from suspicion for decades. The symbols etched in the chamber, the subtle distortions in the river's reflection, and the strange phenomena near the bridge were all deliberate acts, a mix of manipulation and ritual. They weren't merely physical traps, they were psychological, designed to confuse anyone who might come close to uncovering the truth. The sisters had been imprisoned in both body and spirit, held by a force that was terrifyingly clever and patient. As the townspeople listened in disbelief, it became evident that Emily and Sarah's ordeal was far from ordinary. The reflection on the river wasn't a simple optical illusion. It was a warning, a window into the twisted reality that had been concealed for 50 years. Anyone who had glimpsed it saw not just the sisters, but a glimpse of the malicious presence that had orchestrated their disappearance. Fear rippled through the crowd. Whispers of curses and supernatural influence mingled with the realization that a human hand had orchestrated such meticulous evil. The lines between the natural and the supernatural blurred, leaving the town paralyzed between awe and terror. Further investigation revealed more about the hidden chamber beneath the bridge. It wasn't merely a storage space. It had been modified over decades, expanded and reinforced in ways that only someone with intimate knowledge of the bridge could achieve. The marks on the walls and floors hinted at repeated rituals, a deliberate effort to trap the girls' essence alongside their physical bodies. Town historians later uncovered that the original builder of the bridge had ties to secret societies rumored to practice dark rites, suggesting that the sisters' imprisonment might have been tied to something far older and darker than anyone in Willow Creek had imagined. By the time the night had fallen, the full weight of the terrifying truth had settled over the town. Emily and Sarah had not simply disappeared. They had been victims of a deliberate, cruel scheme, hidden in plain sight beneath the bridge all those decades. The reflections, the hidden chamber, the cryptic symbols, they were all pieces of a nightmare carefully crafted to torment not just the sisters, but the town itself. Willow Creek, once a quiet riverside community, now understood that the past it had long tried to bury was alive and breathing beneath the water, and that the horror of 1972 had never truly ended. As the first light of dawn broke over Willow Creek, the town was left in stunned silence. The bridge still stood, rusted and silent, its shadow stretching across the river like a warning. Emily and Sarah's faces, once trapped in the reflection, seemed to linger in memory, a haunting reminder that some secrets refused to die. The chamber beneath the bridge had revealed the unimaginable, but even now, questions remained unanswered, whispers of dark forces and hidden hands that had orchestrated decades of terror. No one could forget the eerie shimmer of the water, the distorted images in the reflection, or the sense that the past was watching, waiting, patient and relentless. Willow Creek would never be the same. The town had glimpsed a truth it had tried for generations to ignore. And as the wind stirred through the trees and the river continued to flow quietly beneath the bridge, the chilling realization settled over everyone who had witnessed it. Some mysteries aren't meant to be solved. They are meant to haunt you forever. And somewhere, deep beneath the bridge, in that hidden chamber where the sisters were once trapped, the echoes of Emily and Sarah still linger. Their story, a tale of innocence stolen and secrets buried, now belongs to the town, and to anyone brave enough to stare into the reflection and face the terrifying truth themselves.
If you liked this video, don't forget to hit that like button, share it with your friends, and drop your thoughts in the comments below. Most importantly, subscribe and hit the bell icon so the next secret finds you first.